You're welcome back. This is Breakfast Daily, and we are going to be talking health now. Now, just in case you didn't know, this week is Malnutrition Week, and so it's very ideal that we talk about malnutrition, especially in children. I have three wonderful people to help me have this conversation. I have David Ameyaw. He is health economist and executive director, Holistic Nutrition Organization. Hi, David.
Hello.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Right, so I also have Joseph B. Dankwa. He's a registered dietitian, health mates. Hi, Joseph.
Hello.
How you doing?
Doing very fine, thank you.
Great, and I have the beautiful lady, Pearl Salome. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist, St. Elizabeth Hospital. Hi, Pearl. Right, so we have these three wonderful people, but let me start with you, David. When we say malnutrition, what exactly do we mean?
Well, I think Pearl would take that for us, right? All right, so
I'm asking you to tell me that.
All right, so malnutrition actually is a situation where the nutrition of a person is inadequate for their health and their growth. And in this case, we celebrating the Malnutrition Week. Our very focus is on acute malnutrition among children under 5 years.
Okay.
And basically, in terms of talking about malnutrition among children, the basic way we assess whether a child is malnourished or not is when we use WHO measurements. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the weights for height. And based on that, can we share screen, please?
Sure.
I think screen sharing has been disabled.
Right, so we'll get on to that, but let's continue.
Okay, Pearl, would you take up from there?
Right, so Pearl, are you with us? So.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Good morning once again.
Good morning.
Yeah, so before we can say a child is malnourished, we do some assessments, some baseline assessments before we can conclude that this child is malnourished or not. So we have some tools that are used. Basically, we take anthropometric data, we take biochemical data, etc. But the basic thing, one of the basic assessments that we do is to do the anthropometric data. That is when you weigh the child, you measure the length of the child, and then compare it with the WHO standards that have been set up globally to assess children. And so when we weigh the child, we take the length or the height of the child and we compare it with these standards. And the child falls below the standards. And also we assess the skin, we assess other things on the child. Then we can make conclusions and say that, okay, this child falls into the category of severe acute malnutrition. One of the tools that we also use in assessing them is the mid-upper arm circumference tape, which we shortly call the MWAC tape. So as you can see on the screen, is one of the basic tools that we also use in assessing children for malnutrition. And with the MWAC tape, it's actually been made simply. It's made simple, so it's in colors. So you see red, you see gold, and then you see green. If the child falls between the red zone or the yellow zone, it means that there's danger. Then immediate actions have to be taken to move this child from the danger zone to the healthy zone.
Right, so we'll be talking much more about how to move them, from the danger zone to the normal zone. But what would cause a child to be malnourished?
So there are different factors that account for malnutrition. But in Ghana here, surveys and studies that we have done over the years have shown that if a child is not fed well right from the beginning, so we have a period of their life that we call the window of opportunity. That is the first 1,000 days of the child's life. This first 1,000 days starts from conception. So when a mother becomes pregnant, whatever she's eating during the pregnancy period for the 9 months till the child comes out. All those things, how all those things go about can expose the child to malnutrition. And when the child also comes out, when the child is delivered, how the child is fed, So universally, globally, the ideal food that we recommend for babies after they are delivered is breast milk. So it is expected that once the baby is out for the first 6 months, they should be given breast milk exclusively without any other thing.
Okay.
And then when they are 6 months, complementary foods or the family foods are added. But this malnutrition sets in usually when they start the complementary food or when the breastfeeding process doesn't go right. That is when sometimes you have the malnutrition coming in. So basically, it boils down to how a child is fed, and also the environment where the child is living, the environment where the child is exposed to. If a child is exposed to a lot of the sanitation around the place is not so good, it exposes the child to different infections, which can also expose the child to malnutrition. If the child doesn't have access to good drinking water, that can also expose the child to malnutrition. So there are several factors, even the family size. You realize that in some homes, you have about 7, 10 kids, 5 children living in the same household. And when we say a child is eating a complete, a balanced meal, we expect to see certain basic nutrients in there. Now, because of COVID, some households are having to face financial difficulties. So even though the child is eating, it is not a complete meal. So a child may be given something like maybe awamo, how we call it in Chi, or braised rice. So the child is eating all right, but it is not a complete meal to meet the nutritional needs for that age of the child. So there are different factors that account for malnutrition in our setting here in Ghana.
Right, thank you, Pearl. Now, Joseph, let me come to you. You are a registered dietitian, and Pearl just mentioned that we look at what the baby is, taking in right from conception. So when I get pregnant, what should I be eating to ensure that my child will not be malnourished in future?
All right, so just as Pearl rightly said, right after birth, the child is supposed to be feeding on breast milk exclusively because
but I want to know, before the baby comes out, what should the mother be eating?
The mother should be eating a balanced meal, especially depending on the trimester of pregnancy. So for every trimester, specific nutrients are needed for the baby's growth and development. So the mother has to be eating a lot of good proteins, healthy carbohydrates, healthy fats, which are all very important so far as the baby's growth is concerned.
Right.
And
so can we break it down?
Of fruits and vegetables.
So let's break it down. First trimester, what should I be taking?
I'm sorry?
So let's break it down. So I'm pregnant. I'm in my first trimester. What should I be eating?
All right. So for most of the cases that I have seen, most of the mothers within the first trimester comes in with iron deficiency, anemia. So meaning that they are not eating a lot of green leafy vegetables and fruits. So that has become the very important foods to promote for pregnant women in the first trimester, in addition to the healthy carbohydrates, proteins, and fats.
And then second, just quickly, and then third.
Yes, and the second, all the healthy vitamins like magnesium, iron, vitamin C, the B12 are all very important. And at the third stage, where the baby requires maturation, the baby needs a lot of proteins to grow. So the mother has to eat all the healthy proteins that are available and in the right amount. Right.
There are some babies. Now let's look at the baby is born. Some babies, after, let's say you've done exclusive breastfeeding for 6 months, now the baby is getting weaned off breast milk, but some children will naturally just not eat. How do you go about this?
Okay, so sometimes the parents just expect too much from the baby. This is a newborn who has never tried family foods and is going to eat for the first time. They may only tolerate just about a teaspoon or two, but we expect them to completely finish whatever it's in the cup from which we are feeding them. And some mothers even go to the extent of holding their noses to force feed them. All these are very wrong attitudes when it comes to feeding the baby, and makes the baby develop very negative attitudes towards food, as they go, and that ultimately may lead to malnutrition too.
Right, thank you, Joseph. Now, Pearl, let me come to you. Elisha from Facebook is asking what the symptoms of malnutrition is. How would I know that my child is malnourished?
Okay, so first of all, you see that the hair color changes. The child's hair color starts to change. You see something like brown. When the child was born, they came out with maybe a dark colored hair, and then all of a sudden, the color of the hair starts changing. It starts looking something like brownish color, and it's very thin. So you look at the hair, you look at the skin. So for some of the children, you see that the skin starts peeling off. They may have some rashes on the skin. These are all occurring because there is a deficiency. So the child, as they are growing, they need certain nutrients, right? Like the antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin E, the proteins for the tissues to be formed. And so if a child's diet is lacking some of these things, you see some of those changes on their skin. So aside the hair and the skin, you realize that they look very thin. Some of them also look very short than their age mates. That's where we describe it as stunting. Okay. And stunting doesn't only have a short term, it has a long term effect on the brain development of the child. So if you start seeing your child's skin color, skin changing, if you start seeing the hair changing, don't just say that, oh, my child is becoming more fair. You should bring the child to a health facility for proper assessments to be done, for you to be given the needed interventions. And also sometimes you see sore in the mouth, you see some sore around the mouth, and then also around the perineal area. So when the child wears diapers, you see sores around those places. All those are signs of acute malnutrition. And parents, once you see some of those things happening to your baby, you should send the baby to the appropriate quarters for interventions to be given.
Right, thank you very much, Pearl. Now, David, quickly, in wrapping up, what would be your advice, as far as feeding children is concerned, to parents, to nannies, to teachers, to child caregivers in general?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that Pearl and Joseph have said a lot about that. I think that you have to begin with eating right during pregnancy. And during the first 6 months of after giving birth, we recommend doing exclusive breastfeeding. We take care of a lot of malnourished kids here, and about 80% of the mothers whose kids are malnourished that we take care of didn't do exclusive breastfeeding. So we think that it is necessary that mothers do exclusive breastfeeding. Now, during the stage where the mother is doing complementary feeding, they have to seek help if they find challenges with the kind of foods to give. And we basically talk about the 4-star diet, and which includes adequate proteins, adequate carbohydrates, adequate fruits, and also vegetables in the food of the child. Often mothers give food in the consistency of an adult, but this is a child who needs to take the food in the consistency they can take it. And in this case, we're talking about having it in a softer consistency, so that at the age of the child, so that the child can grow very well.
Right. Thank you very much, David Ameya. He is Health Economist, Executive Director, Holistic Nutrition Organization, and Joseph B. Dankwa, Registered Dietitian, Health Mate, and Pearl Salome, Registered Dietitian Nutritionist, St. Elizabeth Hospital.